In the year 2035, humanity stood on the brink of a new era in space exploration. The first crewed mission to Enceladus, one of Saturn's most intriguing moons, was about to launch. Scientists had long suspected that beneath its icy surface lay a vast ocean, possibly harboring life. The crew, consisting of Captain Ilara Winters, Dr. Samir Patel, an astrobiologist, and Dr. Lila Chen, a geologist, gathered at the launch site, excitement buzzing in the air. Ilara addressed her crew as they suited up in their sleek, cutting-edge spacesuits. "Today, we are not just making history, we are unlocking the secrets of the universe. Are we ready?" "Absolutely," Samir exclaimed, adjusting his helmet. Lila nodded enthusiastically, clutching a notebook filled with sketches of Enceladus's geysers. With final checks complete, the crew boarded the Odyssey, a state-of-the-art spacecraft designed for deep space exploration. As the countdown began, the engines roared to life, sending vibrations through the cabin. The crew exchanged nervous glances, their hearts racing with anticipation. 3, 2, 1, liftoff. The Odyssey soared into the sky, piercing through the atmosphere and into the vastness of space. Days turned into weeks as the Odyssey glided through the cosmos. The crew settled into a routine, conducting experiments and monitoring systems. They gazed out at the mesmerizing sights of distant stars and planets, each day a reminder of the journey they embarked upon. During a quiet moment in the observation deck, Lila looked through the large viewing window at the gas giant Saturn. "It's beautiful, isn't it? To think that Enceladus is just a speck in that vastness." "Beautiful and mysterious," Samir replied, his eyes reflecting the shimmering rings of Saturn. "Imagine what we might find there." As they neared Enceladus, excitement surged among the crew. Samir and Lila spent hours studying data collected by previous missions, which showed evidence of geysers erupting from the moon's surface. The prospect of discovering what lay beneath was exhilarating. The Odyssey entered orbit around Enceladus, its icy surface sparkling under the distant sun. The crew prepared for their descent. "This is it," Ilara announced, her voice steady. "We're going to land near the South Pole, where the geysers are most active." The descent was bumpy, but Ilara's skilled hands kept the ship steady. As they touched down, a wave of relief washed over the crew. They had arrived. Stepping onto the surface, the crew felt the crunch of ice beneath their boots. They marveled at the stark beauty surrounding them, frosty plains, towering ice cliffs, and in the distance, the geysers erupting like fountains. "Let's set up the research station," Lila said, her voice filled with enthusiasm. As they worked, Samir took samples of the icy surface, while Lila prepared to analyze the geyser plumes. After a day of setting up, the crew turned their attention to the geysers. They watched as icy plumes erupted into the sky, shimmering like diamonds in the sunlight. Samir collected samples from the geysers, excitement bubbling within him. As the analysis began, Lila's eyes widened. "Ilara, you need to see this." The crew gathered around her screen, where complex data revealed organic compounds in the samples. "This is extraordinary," Samir breathed. "We may have found evidence of life, or at least the ingredients for life." Their discovery sent waves of exhilaration through the crew. They documented everything, knowing that they were part of a monumental moment in human history. As the crew celebrated their findings, alarms suddenly blared through the research station. "What's happening?" Ilara shouted, rushing to the control panel. "We're losing power. The geothermal activity must have triggered a fault in our systems," Lila said, frantically trying to stabilize the situation. "Samir, grab the emergency supplies," Ilara commanded. The crew worked together to troubleshoot the issues, their training kicking in under pressure. "We need to secure the research samples before we evacuate," Samir urged. Just then, a violent tremor shook the ground. Cracks began to spiderweb across the ice beneath them. "Get to the ship now," Ilara shouted, urgency filling her voice. The crew sprinted toward the Odyssey, but as they ran, another tremor hit, sending ice and snow cascading down from a nearby cliff. Samir was knocked off his feet, and Lila reached back to help him up. "We need to move faster." Ilara turned to assess the situation, her heart racing. "We have to make it to the ship before the ice collapses." They pushed through the thickening snow, but the ground continued to rumble. Geysers erupted nearby, sending plumes of ice and water into the air. The crew dodged the falling debris as they raced toward the ship. Just as they reached the ship, a massive geyser erupted, its icy spray covering the area. Yelled as they scrambled into the Odyssey. The ship shook as the geysers continued to blast around them, the force of the eruptions creating a deafening roar. Once inside, Ilara initiated launch protocol. The ship's systems flared to life, but as they began to ascend, another violent tremor rocked the ground. "We're not going to make it," Lila shouted, eyes wide with fear. "We will," Ilara replied firmly, gripping the controls. The engines roared to life, and the Odyssey shot upward just as the ground beneath them began to collapse. They watched through the viewing window as the ice crumbled away, revealing dark chasms below. The ship broke free from Enceladus's grasp, soaring into space. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief, their hearts still pounding. Once safely in orbit, they took a moment to process what had just happened. "That was way too close," Samir said, wiping the sweat from his brow. "We need to analyze the data we collected," Lila said, her voice steadying. "What if we've uncovered something that could explain the eruptions?" Ilara nodded, knowing that despite the chaos, they had still achieved their mission. They gathered around the central console, reviewing the samples collected from the geysers. The readings showed not only organic compounds, but also signs of geothermal activity that indicated a vibrant ocean beneath the icy crust. Just as they began to celebrate their findings, an alarm blared once more. "What now?" Samir groaned, bracing himself against the console. "It's a breach in the hull," Lila shouted. "We need to seal it." Ilara grabbed the emergency kits. "Let's move, now." They raced to the affected area where a small fissure had formed in the hull. Lila and Samir worked quickly, sealing the breach as Ilara kept an eye on the pressure gauges. Time was of the essence. They needed to stabilize the ship before it was too late. As they worked, the ship shook violently again. "We're caught in Enceladus's gravitational pull," Ilara exclaimed. "We need to adjust our trajectory or we'll be pulled back down." "Almost there," Lila shouted, applying the final seal. With the hull secure, Ilara took the controls, focusing on stabilizing their orbit. The ship trembled as she wrestled with the controls, sweat beading on her forehead. "Come on, come on." Finally, they broke free from the moon's influence and the ship stabilized. The crew cheered, relief flooding the cabin. The journey back to Earth was filled with anticipation. They shared stories and laughter, reflecting on their adventure, yet each member felt a lingering tension from the chaos they had just experienced. When they finally landed, a crowd awaited them, cheers erupting as the hatch opened. The crew stepped out, greeted by their families and media, but their hearts were still on Enceladus, where they had ventured into the unknown. Ilara took a deep breath, the smell of Earth filling her lungs. "We have a story to tell," she declared, holding up the samples they had brought back. Their discovery would reshape humanity's understanding of life in the universe. As they looked up at the stars, they knew this was just the beginning. Years later, as new missions to the outer solar system launched, the crew of the Odyssey became legends. They inspired a new generation of explorers, sparking a passion for discovery. Enceladus, once a distant moon, became a symbol of hope, reminding everyone that the universe was full of mysteries waiting to be unveiled.